The Vampire Lestat is a show that I was really looking forward to. It is one of my favorite books in the Vampire Chronicles series. But after episode 1, I have a few concerns. Welcome back, everyone. We are here today to talk about the Vampire Lestat. But before I want to get into this, I want to know, who is your favorite vampire? If you haven't been able to guess at this point on my channel, mine is Lestat, but let me know your favorites down in the comments below. And let's talk about this episode. I just watched it a couple times, actually, because I wanted to really process it and just make sure I was getting everything I possibly could from it, because it's a lot. Episode 1 very much feels like a pilot for a show. And technically, this is Interview with a Vampire Season 3. It's just been rebranded as The Vampire Lestat. And I do love how it opens with Daniel saying this is a show that was formerly known as Interview with a Vampire. And now, while we've gone through everything that Louis had to say in his story, it's Lestat's turn. And Lestat has some words for us. And he also has words for everyone that wants to judge him based on Louis's perspective, and I think Louis as well. There are things that I really love about that, actually. The idea of season 3 being a response to Interview with a Vampire, the idea of The Vampire Lestat as a book being a response to Interview with a Vampire and being a response to Louis's story in general. I think that works really well, and it is kind of what the book ends up being. It's Lestat telling his side of the story and telling his life story, how he came to be a vampire, his life even before that. And I think everything that this show is alluding to with the quick flashbacks that we're seeing are going to be really cool once we get into the season. However, with this being an episode that does feel like a pilot for a show, it also feels like it's trying to be really flashy to make sure that it can sell the idea of everything that this season is going to be. And I understand why they feel the need to do that. Essentially, they are now having to recapture the audience again. And it's been a moment since season 2. So I understand wanting to make sure we're all here, we're all listening, we're paying attention. But it does feel with episode 1 that it is very chaotic. There is a frenetic energy to this episode. That is to say, a wild, fast-paced, energetic, kind of untamed pace that we're at, that we're trying to keep up with Lestat, as he is, honestly, he's even trying to kind of keep up with himself, structuring his story in a way that is a little bit all over the place. However, I feel like this does work, or it will work as a season as we get to know him more. But as an episode, I think this can be a little dizzying. It can be a little disorienting. So just keep in mind that this is only episode 1. And I think as we go through, things are going to become a lot more clearer. As Lestat realizes who he really is and settles into that and finds himself, I think this show is going to become a lot more streamlined. But because we're entering into the story at a period where Lestat is kind of lost, it leaves us feeling kind of lost in the episode along with him. We're just kind of ping-ponging around, and Lestat has this idea. He wants to be a musician. He's always been a character who has yearned for the spotlight. And as we go back to his origin story and his life as a mortal, you're going to see more of that as well too. So that's all going to make a lot of sense. But I think even the reason that he thinks he needs the music, or that he's creating this band and going on this tour, this idea of him wanting to be seen because he is a god, because he has drank from the blood of Akasha, I think all of that is a little bit of a charade. It's a little bit of a wall that Lestat is putting up, as opposed to really considering what's going on for him here, that he feels alone, that he doesn't have anyone, and that he needs something. You know, when baby Jenks says to him, when he's having that vision of her on the ceiling, why do you make it so hard for people to love you? Why is it such a challenge? And what do you really want? And he says, I want thousands, I want millions, I want billions of people to love me, and then maybe I'll feel satisfied. The reality is Lestat will not feel satisfied, because it is the age-old tale of a person that really is struggling with who they are and their own actions, and feels like I think at times a monster, a bad person. Lestat is the villain in Interview with a Vampire for most of it, and that's because he is acting as a foil to Louis's very mortal approach to being a vampire. He deals with a lot of guilt, Louis. He feels bad about everything. He's very empathic and he can't let go of things. He's holding on to that piece of him that's mortal. And once he loses it, he feels very detached from the world later in that book and later in that show. A part of him dies. And I think with Lestat, he is very much the opposite, at least through Louis's eyes. And what you come to learn in Lestat's story is that there's a reason for that. Lestat, in order to survive, in order to move forward in his own life as a vampire, kind of embraces this idea of him being a monster. And it's also the way that I think he rectifies some of his actions as opposed to analyzing what really happened to him and diving deeper into the trauma that he carries with him and reconciling with that. He instead just says, like, well, if people think I'm bad or if I think I'm bad, then just be that. What's wrong with that? And so he leans a little bit more into the monstrous side of himself, but there is so much to this character and so much more to who he is. I also just realized in this episode that it's really interesting how much we talk about Lestat having blue eyes when there's so much in the books that talk about him having gray eyes, though granted they are gray eyes that kind of take on the colors around them. So him seemingly having blue eyes or even purple eyes is something that is referred to. So I guess it kind of works, but it's just something that I was just thinking about today. And I was like, it is really weird that we've gone with blue eyes and not gray, which have been something in the book for a very long time. I don't know if they're going to come back to that, but they did refer to a lot of things that are in the books. I think it's interesting as well how this episode plays with our expectations even of who Lestat is and who he's messaging. I was thinking partway through that text conversation between moi and toi that the person that Lestat was going to be texting was his mother, Gabrielle, or Gabriella, as she is referred to in this cast. And I really love what they're already building up with that relationship. It is a crazy relationship, and the fact that we are going for it, I say, is a very bold and cool choice. It is very important to who Lestat is, and I love that this show is not afraid to get into this really bizarre relationship where Lestat is Gabrielle's son, but he's also her maker, so in a way he also is kind of like her creator and she's his creator, and this messy love that they have. And I can't wait to see how they explore just that relationship as well in the past, because it is such a heartbreaking romance, I feel, for Lestat, and such an interesting exploration into Gabrielle's character too, and what her becoming a vampire does to her. It's interesting how becoming a vampire really changes who these people are, and yet also brings out the truth of who they really are. So you see a metamorphosis, but the metamorphosis is really just uncovering the truth and who that person was the whole time. Because once you're a vampire, you're kind of free to be exactly who you want to be. So you're not limited anymore. And all of the fakeness, all of these faces, these masks that you wear just fall away. And that is something that I can't wait to see as we explore more of this relationship between these two characters. Although episode 1 really feels like we're more diving into Queen of the Damned than we are the Vampire Lestat. And where the Vampire Lestat opens with the beginning of Lestat's story, once we get into that, the wolves, which he alludes to in this episode. You know, when he was younger, he fought these wolves, and he talks about how you'll probably hear that story from me at some point, because for a while I made that like a huge part of my identity, that I fought these wolves. And I imagine that's where the scars on his chest are going to come from in his story. And Louis's version of him was clearly a version of him that was from Louis's memories. So that version of Lestat is not truly Lestat. And now we're going to be seeing Lestat for real for the first time. And this is our first exposure to him as the brat prince, the chaotic, messy, hot guy who just is really looking for something that he doesn't know what it is yet. And so he's moving from person to person throughout his life. You know, we see him in an Interview with a Vampire where he really clings to Louis. Granted, that is Louis's perception of what happened. That's important to keep in mind. And I know Claudia and Louis are both going to be in this season. So I imagine we are going to revisit some of those moments that we saw in Interview with a Vampire, or revisit at least that time period and see more things from Lestat's perspective, which I think is really cool. But it is important to keep in mind that it is Louis's perspective of who Lestat is. So that's why he doesn't have these scars, perhaps. And even though in the books, when you are transformed into a vampire, any imperfections that you ever had in life are said to disappear. You essentially become the most beautiful version of yourself. Even, I think, things like beauty marks and freckles may even disappear, if I'm remembering correctly. So those scars technically should be gone when Lestat, transforms. But this is the Immortal Universe. This is an adaptation. So we have our own version of what the Dark Gift does to people and how it transforms them. So in this version, Lestat has his scars. I'm not fully sure that the scars are even literal at this point, just because we do have Interview with the Vampire, and we're already talking about the differences between how Lestat is depicted there and how he's depicted here, and how memory shapes how we remember people, and our memories come from a place of emotion. That's something that we even talk about in this episode. Lestat says, the idea of facts is so old school. Everything's about feeling now. It's all about how we feel about something. And so the way that Lestat feels about himself and feels about the world around him, I think, is at the forefront of the show. And I think that's a really cool concept. Now, the other thing that I want to acknowledge is, while we have some different interpretations of how the Dark Gift perhaps affects people and changes people into vampires, we also have the changing of the eyes, these eyes that become electric. And there are vampires that need to wear contacts, as we saw with Armand back in Interview with a Vampire, disguising himself by wearing contacts, hiding his very vibrant eyes that are unrealistic, that look supernatural. In the same way, they are also taking some liberties. We already talked about the fact that vampires are sleeping together, and there is intimacy in this that is not in the books. There is an intimacy in the books, but it's not as explicit as the show. Granted, this is AMC, and when Anne Rice initially wrote Interview with the Vampire was a different time. So there were some things that, you couldn't really write in books to have your book purchased by everyone. And I think that maybe if that was something that Anne Rice wanted to do, maybe she did pull back. I can't ask her because, of course, she's gone now. But that could be something. So it's not really wrong of them to have it. I don't mind the intimacy in the show. I think it works. But the fact that vampires pee, what is that about? I know that we have it here as a sort of way to show how Louis' accounts are not completely correct. There are things that were left out. And I understand that we also have it here so that we can have a scene that is in a bathroom with the Fang Gang, which, yes, you may have heard me call my community the Fang Gang. I call all of you the Fang Gang. Yes, that is from Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles, if you were wondering. They didn't make that up for the show or anything. That's in the books. That's in the books. The Fang Gang appears in Queen of the Damned. That is something that we take, but the peeing is, what are we doing with that? And what is that even about? Is it just so we could have this scene? Is it to showcase the differences between the two accounts? Will there be more to that? I hope so, because honestly, that was such a weird thing that I didn't know how to process. And hey, maybe that's mentioned somewhere in the books and I just have forgotten. I just am reading through Interview with the Vampire again, and I'm almost done that book, and then I'm going to be moving on to the Vampire Lestat again. And I've read these books many times, but my memory is not perfect. Like even our main characters here that we have in the Immortal Universe, in the Vampire Chronicles side of it, memories are not perfect. They are flawed. So maybe I'm forgetting something, but I hope we do more with that if that is something they're adding in and I'm correct, because it felt really strange. They already have a whole monologue for Lestat where he talks about how the blood is the first thing that vampires love and attach themselves to and is the best experience you can have. The hunt. And then the next thing after all of the things that are related to that is the intimacy. And I feel that the way that they approached him discussing that felt a little over the top. It felt a little too AMC, it's gotta be raunchy. So here we go doing this thing. I mean, I didn't mind him getting it on with people. That's fine. He's Lestat. He is a very sensual character. That has always been true. And in a world where intimacy is possible for vampires, I think that's fine. It works for the character. But the way that they are so gratuitously going into it, I don't know. I have some reservations about that. So I'm hoping that we find a little bit more of a through line for this series as we go through. And I just want to chalk episode 1 up to it being, we need to throw everything at the wall all at once to really hook people. And then once everyone is tuned into this, then we can slow down a bit and we can take our time, because this episode moves so quickly and there's so much going on and there's so many references, and the script is great. I think, I mean, it's very witty, it's very fast paced, but it does feel a little bit like I was run over by a, Lestat's tour bus, and I'm still reeling. So hopefully episode 2, we get a little bit more ground under our feet and we can see where that goes. There's a lot of stuff that they keep referring to that's Queen of the Damned as well. So I really hope we get into more of the meat and potatoes of the Vampire Lestat, because it's one of my favorite books. And I'm just hoping that, I don't mind it being a mishmash of Queen of the Damned and the Vampire Lestat. I just hope the Vampire Lestat is still a very prominent part. But based on all the quick flashbacks that we see, which I'm assuming are going to be whole scenes, I think we are going to be getting that. I have faith still in the show. I'm very excited, but I won't deny that after episode 1, I'm a little nervous. So we'll see how that goes. That's all I really have to say for this episode. I enjoyed it. I had fun, but I am a bit wary. So let me know how you're feeling about episode 1 down in the comments below. Did you love it? Are you also nervous? Did you despise it? Where do you stand with episode 1? And where are you hoping this show will take us? I hope it takes us to some really fun and some really emotional places, because Lestat really is a fabulous character to explore. There's so many layers to him, and Sam Reed, I do believe, really is the best cast that we've ever had for this character, and I cannot wait to see where they take it. And I'm loving the music, by the way. I just need to say that. I will be listening to the soundtrack on repeat. Honestly, I could do a whole video on the soundtrack. So if you want that, I will go through and listen to it and we can discuss that more. But Longface, I really loved. Black Licorice is a wild song. I will definitely be listening to these songs throughout the summer, and I'm excited that we have our own soundtrack that is Lestat songs. It feels Queen of the Damned, but even better because there's so much original music here that is directly tied to this show and this iteration of Lestat. That's all I have. I'll see y'all in the next one. And until next time, friends, stay nerdy. Bye. And if you love when I talk about Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat, make sure you check out some of my other content. We do that here a lot. It's one of my favorite things of all time. So you can check out more of that over here. Bye.